You are now listening to the Low Hanging Fruits podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Chop, chop, chop.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Low Hanging Fruits Pod. I'm your host, Lauren.
I'm Constance.
Elyssa.
And I'm Kelsey.
All right. And what are we here to talk about today, everyone?
The Jewish question. No. Okay, we're
Alright,
cutting that out. We're cutting that out. that bad joke. Okay, no, let's be a little bit
We're
more
here
serious.
today. All right. We're here today to talk about Israel. More like isn't real. Got him. KO.
That was actually worse than my joke. I'll just put that on.
Yeah. No, that's worse.
At least I went for the stars with mine. I went for the stars. Okay, no, we're talking about Israel, but there was I'll put the context. So to put it simply, there was, well, quote unquote, a real estate dispute. Big quotes around that in how do you pronounce it? Sheikh Sharat. I probably am not even pronouncing it yeah. And basically, what I mean by scare quotes is there is basically a just generalized policy of dispossessing Arabs in Israel and in the occupied territories. Which by occupied territories, I'm not even talking about Gaza, but I mean it is. But there's Israel, and then there's, when you look at a map, you see there's Gaza just by the coast, and there's the territory of Israel, the state of Israel. That there's the occupied Palestinian territories. So I'm not really making sense. So that kind of sparked some unrest, and then I suppose there was kind of honestly don't know why that happened. That Israel just decided to just on the holy day of the holy month, they just went into a historic mosque right at I think it was the mosque on the Temple Mount, where the ruins of the old Jewish temple was, and just decided to go fuck shit up. And
Yeah, I wonder why.
And I mean, understandably so. That kind of pissed people off, including Hamas, and some shit started to pop off.
Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people both siding this right now with Hamas and with Israel. I think everybody wants to be the clever, enlightened centrist. I just think if you do, you're an idiot.
Oh, there was the infamous Leftcom article. I mean, okay, wait. I need to pull this up. All right, I need to pull this up because I need to get in my okay, I need to find it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one way to that may seem like both sides thing, but if you say free Palestine, but anti-Semitism still isn't okay or whatever. If you say stuff like that, I guess that's a more reasonable both sides thing, but both sides thing, the two states where one is a nuclear power and one is an occupied territory, that's different because
and a lot of times the anti-Semitism stuff is in bad faith. There is an actual there's a legitimate concern there. I'm not gonna pretend there's no anti-Semitism on the left, right? But it's not you're going to I'm not going to take a liberal seriously who doesn't know anything about the sheer atrocity that is going on there. We need to put it on
if it's just it's often just criticizing Israel's anti-Semitic and saying free Palestine is anti-Semitic, and just not just saying full solidarity with the Israeli victims of Palestinian rockets or whatever. Unless you say that, you're anti-Semitic. That's more or less the framing a lot of people go for. But I have seen more good faith approaches to that, where it's more or less like, hey, there's a bunch of like
It's a,
anti-Semitic attacks in other countries around the world,
Well,
and
I do wonder about that
those
because
aren't justifiable just because like Israel is, uh, I mean, essentially carrying out an ethnic cleansing, right?
what's been happening a lot in America is like far right conservatives, like Trump administration people, have been accusing people like AOC of emboldening anti-Semitism by even just vaguely supporting Palestine.
well,
And
just
what I
stating
think
the
is very
fact that it's an
interesting about
apartheid
that.
state. That's what AOC
Well,
tweeted
hang
out.
on, hang on, hang on. Hang on. That's my point. My point is that I think they're acting in bad faith when they bring up anti-Semitic attacks.
Of course.
Because
Yeah.
usually what happens with this is there will be some sort of study or some sort of article written about the fact that there are these attacks, and then the interpretations come in. Usually that's how it works. But what we're seeing now is actually the opposite. What we're seeing now is people are getting their hot takes about anti-Semitism
Oh.
is never okay, and then we're supposed to just believe based on that there's data behind what they're saying. But I have not seen any proof that that's what's happening, and that is what bothers me. Is that it's a little convenient to just believe that there's anti-Semitism when people are criticizing Israel, but I feel like you should have to prove that it's happening in order for people to believe it. Because like I mean, the narrative is that it's this big thing on like all fronts, and it's happening everywhere, and like that's how people say it is anti-Semitism is being emboldened. Okay, well, can you show me the anti-Semitic attacks? Can I read an article about like a Jewish guy who got like mobbed at like a grocery store or something?
Like the
Can you
thing is, there was
show
a
me? Show me. I just want to see the evidence. I just want to see it.
I think I did hear. I mean, I didn't really look into this too much, so I say this with reluctance, but I did hear about like some Holocaust memorials being like vandalized, and I mean, like, yeah, I think like if you just I think there's like a couple of ways to approach that, right? Like you there's like the bad faith ways that like some like Zionists will do it when they're like, oh, look, this is because like we're emboldening anti-Semitism by like um, with this rhetoric that like Israel is uh, uh, like carrying out an ethnic cleansing and like by not supporting Israel and like that's all emboldening anti-Semitism. But like one more good faith approach I've seen, and it's like not like this is like a huge chunk of like the media landscape or whatever, right? This is just like a couple of people I've seen on my timeline who I think generally uh, have these uh, have a good perspective on this, and they more or less say, hey, yeah, Israel is carrying out an ethnic cleansing, are horrible, but like this is still not good, right? Like vandalizing Holocaust memorials,
yeah,
still pretty fucked, right? Like, but like
Yeah, of
but like
course.
if I
the
remember, like
two don't have to be in tension. The two. That's yeah. That's the more good faith approach I've seen.
because like if I remember per capita, like in the U.S., like hate crimes against Jews is like for the population of like Jews in America, it is still like it is up there. I think it's like number one, quite literally. Now the problem is like depending on like who's doing the reporting, like there's the problem where like the conflation between criticism of like of Israel or
Yeah.
Zionism, like how much that conflation, even with like the conflation there that can be done, like even then, like it's kind of
Yeah, well,
ridiculous.
I mean, and I don't think anybody should have any business denying that there's anti-Semitic hate crimes and things like that.
But
But I
Yeah.
just worry when I see like Trump administration
oh yeah,
officials and like Republican
I mean
strategists
Trump
talking
like
about it
literally.
because well, hang on, because they literally expressly embolden anti-Semitism. They love anti-Semitism. It was their bread and butter. They defended Nazis. But now, I mean, who's to say that that lingering sentiment isn't a result of that, and not just the fact, and not as opposed to the fact that people like Palestine. I just feel like we're being very selective with how we like treat these events, and I do wonder about it. I mean, I'm not denying that it could be the case. I just feel like people take things very much on faith, and I don't want to take this on faith because I
Oh,
just feel like
obviously.
it's too politically convenient.
I mean, I think like even if we were to grant like, okay, maybe like just a very big concession, but like for the sake of argument, if we were to grant that like supporting Palestine um, may embolden anti-Semitism, right? Like, I mean, at that point, it's just like, okay, so then we just like also combat anti-Semitism, but like we can't just ignore an ethnic cleansing going on, right? Like, I mean, that can't really like even if that were just granted, like you can't really use that as an excuse to ignore what's going on. So like, I
Of
mean,
course,
when
yeah.
people, yeah, when people like, I think when people try to make that connection and try to say, hey, this emboldens that. Um, I mean, they're doing it to essentially like shut down like the pro-Palestine rhetoric. Essentially, like it's. I mean, even if that were the case, it wouldn't change anything about like the importance of pointing that out.
Of course, yeah.
Well, to go
I
back, like,
100% agree.
remember Trump? I remember, like, clearly Trump, like, once had like a speech where he quite literally invoked like anti-Semitic like stereotypes, but he thought it was a good thing. Like, he was like literally talking to like an audience of like old like conservative Jews. As like, I know you people. I know you like doing deals. It's like just like,
Yeah.
but like he thought it was a good thing. Like, it was like so that
It's extremely funny.
and let's remember,
It's
like the Trump administration officialized the fact that like just gave like East Jerusalem which was supposed to be like the capital of like of a Palestinian state and a two-state solution. Now that's dead. Like if Finkelstein says that like two-state solution is dead, it's dead. He was like one of the last holdouts. So that's like fucking over about that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I don't know. It's just a really funny situation, and not in the ha ha way. I just think that looking at this as objectively as possible,
I mean, it was like
this is
tweets
like
going on like
a,
tweets
a
going on like
foundationally genocidal program. There are lots of people. I mean, there are still many Arabs in Palestine and Israel, but there were lots of people who lived where those Israeli settlements are, who aren't alive anymore because they were killed off. And I just think that that's something that nobody wants to admit either. It's inherently a genocidal program. It was
yeah.
established by
from the very
genocide.
start population displacement and genocide. Like, look, we need to like
Yeah,
okay, like when we're talking about Gaza, we need to like keep things in like to understand what that is, right? What Gaza is. It's a concentration camp, right? It literally is. Does anybody disagree with like that assessment? It's a concentration camp. It's an open air concentration camp. It's a prison camp. It's literally an open air prison.
no, 100%.
And like and we need to understand the people who live in Gaza are the descendants of refugees from the Nakba a lot of times, or like refugees from like other like things that happened like even after that. And the population in Gaza is half of it are children, 18 and under, 1 million
Hell.
children.
Jesus Christ.
85 to 95 of the water in Gaza is unfit for human consumption. It's a prison camp. Every day, parents give water to their children that they know is killing them. So I don't want to hear, I do not care about the crocodile tears of Israelis getting killed by rockets when people, like 2 years ago, people went to the border with Gaza peacefully. Like it was a march, like it's a great march. It was is a non-violent like attempt. They just got shot by snipers, kids in wheelchairs, pregnant women. So I don't want to hear any concern like mongering when that's the situation. They have every right to use every means to get out of that prison.
I 100%
That's
agree.
the situation. That's the situation.
Well, and it's also just from a technical perspective, you have to recognize why it is that they
Because
use
the
the
only other
rockets.
solution
And
is like to
it's
basically
because it's the
acknowledge
only
that
way
they
that
should
they
be
can cheat their
exterminated.
way out of their settlement. That's the
One thing
technical
that
reason why they have rockets now and why they're using them is because this is the first time that they've had the ability to shoot at that range at Israeli settlements.
one thing that
It's a
like
purposeful declaration of their ability to defend themselves.
one thing that this reminds me of is like what I've seen a lot of people who try to kind of both sides this uh, bring up is that like they often say like Hamas wants to like has the intent of like destroying Israel or just like killing of all Jews or whatever or killing of all Israelis. And I mean I don't even know to what extent there's truth to that, but like if there were the case, like they're not really in a position to do that, right? Like
At best, it would be Spider-Man, like the Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other. But like the thing is,
yeah, but
there's one who's like literally just been amputated and is just like basically just like on life support. One of the Spider-Man's on life
yeah,
support.
and I mean in this situation, like Palestine, Hamas is like far more likely to give concessions uh, than Israeli government because the Israeli government is winning, right? Like why would they give concessions? They have no reason to give concessions. They have all the power. Like
Hamas
I
was
mean,
ready.
and Palestine, like Hamas can essentially say like, okay, we will uh, like lower our demands and like
Hamas was ready to do a
to
deal based on the 67 border. Israel rejected it
yeah,
every
I
Yeah,
time,
mean,
that's
and
their
they kept.
explicit terms. They say we'll return to the 67 borders.
and
It's not even a
and
fucking border.
and from Israel's perspective, like why would they take the deal? They're winning. They like they don't have to concede. Like they can just right. Like they have all the power in this situation.
They have the
But
power,
like
and the U.S. is just it's a blank check because it's not Israel doesn't control the U.S.'s like foreign policy. America, it's a Joe Biden clip, right? If you saw it on the timeline, where it's like if Israel didn't exist, we would need to create it because that's their outpost in the
yeah,
Middle East. It is a gold mine for them as like a geopolitical
that's
asset. The moment the
that's
U.S. would
essentially
drop, the moment the U.S. would drop Israel, they're done for, basically, unless
Oh my
they
god, and
manage some
every
deal with
person
like
in that area
China.
would rightfully fucking annihilate.
that's essentially what Nazis think, right? Like that it's the other way around. That Israel controls the U.S. instead of the
Yeah,
U.S.
this is a Zog
Israel.
thing, the Zionist occupied government stuff. And unfortunately, if
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about like left anti-Semitism, it does like it's kind of like it's kind of very close to like the sort of like analysis where like the CIA controls all world events or whatever kind of like it's just very simplistic with like it doesn't understand like how things begin or like here's the thing, it kind of reminds me, when like I don't know, like tankies just like point to like the CIA being everywhere and just like, see, this thing received like CIA funding. But they don't understand like that's what they do. Like CIA would literally give anybody any money because they want assets. They want to be able to like have all their bases covered. And a lot of times they're not doing the work. They're funding other people for them to like do things or like do like coups. And then the fact they funded them is just like their back channel to just like get what they want. It's not just.
Well, one does wonder how to what level the CIA is involved in China, and
Yeah,
like,
of
are
course.
there? Because like we know that American companies are heavily involved with Chinese companies for sure, but like, I don't know. I mean, would that fucking change anything for their perspective? Probably not, right?
I mean, I personally don't like. I kind of with relation to the CIA, I kind of like I understand like the whole like, oh, the CIA is everywhere thing, but like I don't like relying on that, right? Because like
Well, they rely on it, but then they
the
forget that like everybody else has like intelligence agencies. We only talk about them. And it's
yeah,
like guess what? China, like all the
but it's
superpowers
like
have their own thing going on.
but it's like America is the most powerful, and they kind of blow that up, right? Like, yeah, I mean, they kind of
Well,
see the CIA as
it
far more uh, like far-reaching in their influence than they are.
yeah. Well, the thing is, it is far-reaching, but they don't know how, why, like the exact mechanism. It's just like a blob. CIA is like just some sort of blob, and it just I guess it can do like anything because it's a supernatural like power. But what's infuriating
They talk
about it is
about it
that they
like it's the
reclaim
Eye
to
of Sauron.
yeah, but like the thing is they're supposed to be like Marxists, and so they don't have like they can't like link that to a critique of political economy at all.
Yeah.
That
I mean, if you just like point out like, hey, here's some incentives why this country would do this, right? Like, I mean, the thing I always say is like, you don't need a conspiracy for good analysis, right? Like, yeah, there are like intelligence agencies conspiring to do things. They're like, and there's all kinds of shady shit going on, right? But
but
you
if that's their
don't need
starting
to
point,
rely on predicting where that's happening and like guessing. Like you don't need to rely on that for like a solid analysis.
yeah, it's complementary. Like it's fun to like just be like, oh look, I have an analysis here. I can point to like the economic like dynamics or like the geopolitical thing going on, but also like, like it's you don't need to rely on it. It's sort of like an additional thing you can point to, or you can mix it in.
Like,
But if you just use that as your base to like your whole politics, it's just like, everything's like a conspiracy and like you can't like know anything and you can't infer anything. It's just sort of has to be like has to it's like great man theory, but like applied to intelligence agencies or like cabal groups. And it's sort of like
Like cabal theory.
yeah. Anyways, we're supposed to be talking
I,
about
I
Israel.
think it
Yeah.
I think it also kind of like promotes like a kind of defeatist attitude, right? Like there's also this thing like when people talk about like revolutions, they really like to overhype the U.S. military, like
Or the intelligence agencies. Let's remember,
yeah,
like
like
in some of the highest like some in like the Bolshevik Party, like there was like high level infiltrators, even like the Central Committee that was like under the Okhrana, like the Tsarist police. Like just like people would like just think that just having like intelligence agency or just that would like prevent like revolution. Like no, like even if you have infiltrators, that's not like how infiltrators work. They just think that like an infiltrator is automatically going to ruin something. A lot of times, like they don't even reveal
I,
themselves because they just want the intelligence.
I think a lot of these people like they watch like movies and TV shows and they
Yes.
think like holy shit, these agencies and the military, they're fucking powerful. They're like we couldn't possibly hope of ever like overcoming those institutions, but like those movies are made like with like with collaboration of like
Yes.
those agencies, like cop shows. Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But they don't say they have their like idea of like those institutions from like movies and TV, but I mean they do. Like, it's always from that.
I mean, I guess there's a certain point to which you could just say like military propaganda in Hollywood and stuff is they do it for a reason. It's very effective. It
Yeah.
convinces you of all the right things about our government. And at the same time, it's also waving the bloody shirt a lot of the time. Movies where soldiers get blown up and it's like, oh, they're heroes. They're sacrificing. They're
Yeah.
fighting for you.
Yeah, I think that's a part like a lot of leftists can see beyond that. They're like, oh, I mean, this is all bullshit. Like, U.S. military is bad, right? But like, what they can't see past is like the overhyping of like how powerful and how invincible the U.S. military and like these intelligence institutions are, because like yeah, like they'll think like yeah they're bad, but like we couldn't possibly hope to defeat them, but like and then they think like but we can reform them away, which is even
I
dumber.
think they seem pretty vincible.
Talking about
What's
Hollywood,
that
Yeah.
fucking
like
line? That line from Invincible where he's like, I don't know, dude. See, isn't it kind of optimistic?
I'm not sure if I've seen that movie.
I'm not sure
Oh
neither.
yeah, it's Amazon has a new like animated superhero series that I got pretty into for a bit. One of
Can
my
you
weird
explain the
obsessions.
context of the scene? Isn't it a bit optimistic?
So, yeah, so Invincible is essentially he's like Superman's son, basically, the
Yeah.
equivalent of Superman's son. So he calls himself Invincible. Um, and at the end of the series, he's talking to his friend, and the alien who is his friend, he's like, "What's your name?" And he's like, it might not be the end of the series. It might be when they meet early on. I can't remember. But he's like,
Yeah.
"What's your name?" And he's like, "I'm invincible." And he's like, "Really? Because we just fought. You seem pretty vincible to me." Isn't it kind of optimistic?
Yeah. 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 I I think that's like this also I think a lot of people say about like the Avengers movie that they're like military propaganda, which is I think less obvious because like it's a lot less grounded than like war movies, right? Like because they're superheroes, we think like, oh, they're just like oh, it's just like a super soldier guy. It's a Hulk guy. It's a Norse god, right? Like, but
Yeah.
I do
Well, in a
think there's
certain sense,
something there.
it's almost too obvious, you know? Like,
Yeah,
he's literally Captain America, and he teams up with
yeah,
a Norse god and like a big CEO who's a genius, and it's like it's actually, in a sense, it's incredibly obvious. I mean,
yeah. But at the
but it's
same
so
time, it
obvious that I
isn't,
think
right?
people just take it purely on aesthetics.
But I mean, I still like the event. I have to say, I still like the Avengers, right? But like, I mean, I think you can separate like supporting like a message, a movie or set of movies sense and like liking them for because like I think they're pretty good story, but like it's pretty obvious because like yeah, Tony Stark is essentially how Elon Musk fans see Elon Musk,
Yes.
and yeah, and I mean Thor is just like I mean Norse mythology is incredibly how do you say that it's incredibly put on a pedestal by like white nationalists and whatnot, right? Like, I mean, I think there's a reason they went for Norse mythology and not like Egyptian, because like Norse mythology very much appeals to like, yeah, I think a kind of like, yeah, a kind of white guy.
Well, I think it's kind of funny because when you really think about it, looking at like, I mean, just I'm not a huge fan of the Avengers. I don't like them on their own merits. Nothing to do with whether or not it's propaganda. But I think it's very funny that the only person who can lift Thor's hammer is Captain America, besides Thor. Like he's the only person who's worthy. Literally, Captain America is the only other person who can lift the legendary Norse weapon, and it's like, all right, man, chill with that. Little on the nose.
Can also lift it, but like he's like a weird like AI slash like Mind Stone, like
Yeah, well, Vision is like genetically perfect, so that's another weird
yeah.
dimension.
I mean,
Hmm.
Vision literally like just came into life and was able to pick it up. But like, I mean, I guess maybe you could explain that. I kind of wonder like Maybe this is a bit too off topic, but like
We're very
the
off
the
topic, anyways. So I'll go.
yeah the like the what's being worthy like of Thor's hammer. What does that really mean? Because like maybe it's not as like not as idealized as we imagine it to be, right? Like because yeah, I mean
Hope
Captain
so.
America is said to be worthy, but like what qualities of him make him worthy? That's
Oh, he's
yeah, I don't
righteous.
know.
He's a protector of the weak, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure, but we've gone a bit off topic. Like
Of course, yeah.
you
As we
you
do. As we
you
do.
you also wanted to talk about like a tweet I made, right? Like a screenshot I tweeted into the world,
I
right,
can't
Lauren?
remember what it was. Do you have it to hand?
It was from Peter Coffin.
Oh no.
Amazing.
uh, Hello,
Do you
darkness,
remember?
my old friend.
I'll see
Anytime
if I
Peter
can
has a
pull it
meltdown,
up.
we should call it a coffin fit.
I'll see if I can pull it up.
Uh,
Um,
all right,
let me see.
I'm all right.
Here I have it. Yes, here they said like Zoe Baker like or anarcho like anarchist YouTuber essentially says something about like oh here like intersectionality doesn't ignore class politics and it talks about like how class oppression interacts with other systems of oppression. And she had like a whole take about that, and Coffin quote tweeted that with like, "No, class is material," and then between like I don't know what you call those, a relationship to means haves or have-nots,
That's not what
while
it is.
oppression by identity is ideological. They are categorically different, and intersectionality does not treat them as such. In intersectionality, class is 1. Identity, 2. Income brackets. Class is neither. And I
Well,
think there's
that's just like saying that you think intersectionality is all liberal idipole. That's how they're
Yeah.
yeah, I
talking.
think there's a lot to unpack about this tweet because like I think it's incoherent even if you're a class reductionist. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me. Like
I'll just mention
because
there's a good I take this from Varn. I don't know if you know who that is, but he says that uh, if you're really like a class reductionist, if you become like a class reductionist enough, you just loop back around to, you know, quote unquote being intersectional because just like it becomes very clear if you reduce down things to like just class, you're gonna see racial divides. You can't like you can't like just be blind to it. It is so stark.
like but yeah I think there's like there's there's this one kind of like viewpoint I've noticed where it's like that's kind of called class reductionist, which may be what you're referring to, but like I don't really think it's all that harmful, but like there's this viewpoint essentially that like a lot of these uh, systems are like born out of class society and like um, I've seen a lot of like Marxists claim like patriarchy comes out of class society and like and like essentially I think that like what really matters is how you think we should like move forward. Should we and like what makes make sure that all these systems of oppression can be like abolished, right? And like I think that's where the class reductionism comes in because like if you think like we just need to uh, combat class and like make sure like class doesn't exist anymore and like the rest will go away on its own, right? Like I think that's class reductionist, right? If you're just like, oh, it doesn't matter, we don't need to actively combat racism because that will just go away on its own
It's
if
liberal.
we've combated class.
It,
But
it reminds me a
Well,
lot of
that's I
yeah,
like
mean,
but
liberal, like colorblind, being like colorblind. Just I don't know if that makes sense.
yeah,
that's Peter's falsehood that they always perpetuated for, well, not always, but for quite some time now, is that class reductionism is just when you care about class, and if you care about class, they'll call you a class reductionist. Which I think might be
Cope.
true of some particularly deranged liberals, but on aggregate is not what I have seen. I've seen the opposite, where if you believe that if you take this view that like human history is a history of class conflict, if you take that and you expand onto it, you project onto it the idea that addressing class as we understand it as a conflict between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, if you take that concept of class and you just say, okay, we address this, then all of those other problems are over. I was really resistant to this idea that Peter had that all of these other things are like there's class and then there's culture, and like class struggle between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie is predicated on the base of society,
It's vulgar
on
base
capitalism,
superstructure. It's
and that yeah, it's very vulgar based superstructure, because then they imply that like, oh well, race and sexism and homophobia, that's all superstructure. And I think that that's incredibly ignorant in the sense that they proposed it, because they were talking about it like, oh yeah, no, this racism and everything is just generated by classism, or not classism, but that is generated by these class structures. And like, well, what would that imply? That like these things didn't exist before capitalism, or didn't exist before class, or couldn't exist without it? I don't think any of those viewpoints really hold up when you actually give them some thought. But it's a very attractive point of view if you want simple answers to complicated questions.
I
exactly.
think it's I think it's even that like even if you like take the view that like all these systems of oppression emerge out of class society, right? Like I don't think that implies like um, the 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 viewpoint that Peter takes. That's like, okay, we just need to focus on class, and then everything else will wither away. Because like, I mean, I think you can think that like everything else comes out of class, but these other systems of oppression, like they help uphold class society, and like essentially like you can try to abolish class on its own, but like if you don't actively combat racism and ableism and like patriarchy, like it won't work, right? Like you'll just fail, right? Because like these other systems of oppression like help uphold class society. Like I think that view, I don't really mind that. Like I mean, that's just a disagreement on like the origins of these systems, but like the way forward is essentially like we agreed we need to combat all to abolish all, but like yeah,
I think that yeah, I mean, kind of, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think the problem with that perspective that they had was that their concept of class is very much, it exists in the context of capitalism. But I don't think that when Marx said that like human history is the history of class struggle, I don't think that that perspective means that capitalism has always existed. I think that,
yeah,
which
Oh,
I think
absolutely not.
would
Like
have
because
implied,
in feudal
because
society,
Marx talks
classes
about the
existed.
historical origins of classes,
yeah,
right? Feudal classes. Theoretically, you could have a, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Theoretically, you could have a class society predicated on racial hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
Is
But
it
like,
is it not theoretically possible to do that?
I mean,
I'm
the
not saying that's our
like,
society, but
I
couldn't you
mean,
make
like
a society like that?
ancient like let's just like when we think back to like Rome or like Greece, there's like the Athenian, well not Athenians, but you know what I'm talking about. Fuck, what's the name? What's
uh,
the Hellenistic like society or just like Roman society?
didn't Michael Parenti write on Rome?
No, please no, 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 no. Okay, no, no. But like, it was predicated on a lot of slave labor, right? But like, it wasn't like surplus extract. It wasn't like exactly. It wasn't that. But like, these societies were built a lot of like slavery. It wasn't like exactly racialized in the same way, but like like there's many ways
Well, the
like
concept of race was different from ours.
yeah,
Just, I mean,
Yeah.
of course, but like here's the thing, in like Marxism, there's this insistence on like things being historically specific. That is to say that like there's not like it's not like a succession of like you know ideas of like okay it has to be this way, like one thing had to lead to the other necessarily, like things can just it's only by looking back like looking at the present and just like kind of figuring out like you can see why things became the way they are through like historical development. It's not
right.
there's nothing just you know like it's just
Or,
like but,
or is that? I think like there's what you're saying kind of reminds me of like how a lot of people say like problem with Marxism is like it's economically deterministic, like that like everything necessarily leads to like some other thing, right? Like there's necessary outcomes. Is that kind of what you're like describing, which that isn't the
I think,
case,
yeah.
or
I mean,
it's
I think that people say that about
it's very
Marx a
vulgar
lot because
Marxism.
probably,
That's what I'll say.
yeah,
There
right.
is like a grain
Well,
of
I think
truth in like certain things, but it's very vulgar take on it.
the only grain of truth that I see in that is the fact that Marx uses language sometimes that sounds deterministic, but I don't think the framework is deterministic because of how
Also,
much
very
it's
much depends
predicated
on the
on cause
German
and
words
effect.
beneath the translation, because sometimes that can really fuck you up.
Certainly.
Like,
Yeah. Well,
bec-
I'm
it's
a vulgar only English speaker. I have one
but like
language.
I do remember reading something about like the way that like Marx talks about classes. Like he talks in aggregate. He's not saying the proletariat has to do this. Doesn't say petty bourgeoisie does this necessarily, or the big bourgeoisie does like this and this necessarily. He's talking about aggregate. What like it's kind of like probabilistic. Like this is what's most
yeah,
likely what
talking
to happen.
generally,
Yeah, in general terms, like in aggregate.
yeah,
So like it's never
yeah.
like so because like unless like can you imagine like trying to write something like trying to predict like the movement like the dynamic of like classes and just being like okay so here's the thing I'm going to write like 5 different points of how everything could go like can you imagine like writing like that instead of just being like okay so with like what we know like my theory like this is how it's most likely how to go but like with the implicit that like that's not like a sure fact it's just my prediction but
That
within
was the
that
thing that was
prediction
mad
like there's
about
like reasons where
the
things aren't
debate that Max
gonna
had with SDL.
huh.
That was what was maddening to me about the debate that Max had with SDL.
Yeah.
Is SDL kept insisting that Marx has like no empirical value. Like he doesn't care about like where's the empirical source? Like how do we know that the premises are valid? All that shit. And all I have to say about that is I think that that's a really stupid thing to say, and it kind of like the way that Max put it is like that just shows you've never read Marx
Well, no,
because
it's
Marx is
very
all
simple.
about
The
this.
problem with SDL, the problem with the SDL was that like he was just trying to brute force like his own assumptions on how like empirical data like because the empirical data has to come from assumptions you have because that is going to model what you're looking out for. Someone who's like theoretical assumptions about class isn't like a thing with means of production or like who like you know ownership and it's just like income brackets that's going to affect the empirical evidence that you think is relevant compared to like a Marxist. Like that really matters. So like like just saying empirical evidence, like no, like before that you need to like the empirical evidence. Like if you're gonna have like shared empirical evidence, you need to have shared definitions about at least like a couple of the different things. You can disagree, but like if you have like a common ground, that's where the empirical evidence like comes in.
Did you see that clip of him?
Yeah,
I
I
can't remember
know,
who
I
the
know,
one
I
he
know.
shared.
I
My
clipped a
kind
few
of
things
socialism
myself.
is a Scandinavian model, but with a sort of like Genghis element.
I mean, he's
This
honest.
socialism shutting the fuck up, buddy.
He's honest about it. Like at least he fucking said it. I
Yeah.
mean, everybody
Yeah.
who's like knows their thing kind of realizes sock dems just want to be dang, but like with human rights, I guess, like a more veneer of human rights.
Yeah, I just wish he'd stop
Um,
trying to call it socialism.
I mean,
but like,
in a sense, he's correct to
uh,
call himself a socialist, but that's being controversial because that's why I call
In
myself
what
a communist.
sense?
but just going back to the tweet, there's one thing, just the first few lines which really baffle me, which like I'm curious about your thoughts on like what goes on in Peter's mind here, because like
Oh
the
no.
class is material while oppression by identity is
Oh,
ideological, which like to me
what
like implies like
what
class
really bothered
oppression
me.
is not ideological and like oppression by identity is not material, which like I mean both are both, right? Like what's going on in their mind
Look,
here?
you want to
Like
know where it went wrong? The first thing when I read this, no, class is material. Okay, and then in brackets, here's where it fucking goes off the rails. Relationship to means like what do you call it? Like fuck. In French it's tirer, but relationship to means in like a little thing, and then haves, have nots. So he's equating means of production to like have nots, and I think what they mean by this is income brackets. That's how this fucking works.
but
Like
like he 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 denounces income brackets later in the tweet. Like
I
what's
know.
going on in their mind? Like
I'm going to become the fucking Joker.
how
You
does
know,
this like
it's incoherent to use haves to have nots for that, absolutely. Because you can apply that
and
to either side of
uh,
that
okay,
comparison.
like maybe if I'm being charitable here, like they just mean like okay, relationships to means of production have means of production, have
But
not
no,
means of production. But
they
like
That's
were
what I think they
boosting.
mean in a literal sense, but I just think that it's
that,
a consistent way of framing
that's
it.
extremely charitable, I think. But like even if we're being that charitable, like
I will
how
not
does
be
the
charitable. I refuse.
but like how does the class is material identity ideological make sense? Because
Materialism is
like
stored in the balls.
but name no, because like even from a class reductionist perspective it's like okay, how is class oppression not ideological, right? Like
Well,
so
I
like
have to get into this because have you guys read Peter's book?
I
no,
no
I know someone
no.
who
It's very intriguing, and the way that I would describe it is it's a shadow of Zizek. It's like
I
using a lot of the same, talking the way that Zizek talks, but without necessarily a lot of the background and substance. I think like
I
Zizek always is going back to like, oh, he references Lacan, he references all these other
Yeah.
thinkers. Whereas like when Peter does it, it's kind of like if Mark Fisher talked like Zizek, basically. Like if you've read like Capitalist Realism, it's written in the way that Zizek talks, but with the kind of references and like talking points that Fisher has. And it's a really interesting way of thinking. So I 100% when I saw them say like ideology in that way, I knew immediately where they were coming from with that. I don't agree. I think that it's stupid,
what do
but I
they
do
mean
think
by
that it's very
ideology?
funny.
Because
The trash can.
like
The trash can of ideology. They just saw the movie clip from Zizek, and that's where they got their thing from. You just
I
put on the
Well, that
I
is
glasses
know
and
I do know someone who has read their book, right? But like um he's very like the person who's read that book is very like into the Boer and situationists, and he says like it's horrible. It's apparently like a horrible take on the Boer, which is very funny to me because Peter is very into that. But like I think I also remember like that guy who's read him like they said like there was a part of Peter's book where they compared like Max Stirner to Ayn Rand, right? And like that they're
Yeah, I
essentially the
remember
same
that.
thing. Yeah, I just
So true. So
Well,
true.
Peter buys into the whole like individualism versus collectivism dynamic.
Cringe.
yeah, I think essentially my perspective on that is like I think they're just like different ways of framing things, right? But like I think they can often be indicators of other positions, right? But like often it just comes down to framing, right? Like I think you can like write a piece with a few like conclusions laid out beforehand and like come to the exact same conclusions with like an individualist and collectivist framing and like yeah, I mean it's just framing to me, right? So I don't really
Yeah,
care
I
about
100%
that
agree.
dichotomy.
Well, I mean,
But
the last episode that we recorded when we talked about like kink and pride, I had like different angles on it. And I had like a sense of like, oh, it could be good for the community to have it, but it's also good, I think, for however you want to conceive of like individual freedom. I think that it's good for freedom of self-expression to allow it as well. So I think that like is that a collectivist perspective because I think that it's a good for the community and that's why I want it? Is it an individualist perspective because I'm thinking about personal freedom? I it doesn't seem to me to be an awfully coherent way of thinking about the world.
yeah, I mean, I think like most like anarchist stuff I've read, like they seem to kind of like to them it seems kind of like inseparable, right? Like you can't really have like you can't have individual freedom without like a kind of like I mean, I think there's like this one quote of Bonanno that's like if there's a single uh, person in the world in chains, right? I am not free, and that's essentially like I think the perspective that like most of the anarchists I've read um, have, that is like inseparable from each other, like individual freedom and like collective like freedom and kind of well-being.
Yeah, I mean
So
I
yeah,
think
I mean,
it's not, I mean it's an interesting way of describing stuff, but that's like I mean again, it's just like it's like the way that Americans talk about things where they go, "Oh, do you love freedom?" And it's like, well, everybody loves freedom, but how do you love freedom? You know, like
yeah.
that's
Look, I'm
it's just a weird way of talking about it that doesn't capture the essence of the thing. So anyway, I mean, I can lend you guys, or I don't know, at a distance, but like I can tell you guys about Peter's book and I can read it for you guys on the
oh my
pod
god. Look, I'll just
because
oh god.
it's kind of a fascinating situation. And I remember when we were actually like friends,
Oh.
like reading the book and reading it and thinking like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And I didn't really agree with a lot of it, but this was before I had read like any Zizek or any Mark Fisher. So I didn't, it's kind of like,
You didn't have the context to understand.
well, yeah, it's like watching like
There was a farce in
shit like
the
Rashomon after you've seen like Kill Bill and you go, oh, I get it. Like
yeah.
that's where that came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, you needed the proper prerequisites to read Peter Coffin.
Yeah, exactly. We need a Peter reading group.
Oh my
Yeah,
god. Yeah.
I'm trying to imagine like someone going on like a philosophy subreddit and going like any prerequisites on where to start with like Peter Coffin.
I'm sure that somebody has done that, but it was probably on like the BreadTube, like subreddit.
Yeah, probably.
You need to read the complete
However,
works of
my main
conspicuous user.
criticism, my main criticism of the
Yeah,
book, like, as a fellow author, would be that it's very helter-skelter. It's kind of all over the place. It's like rambly. Peter writes the way that I talk, like it's just a million tangents and kind of like
Oof.
diverging things, giving kind of a different like giving a sense of things, but only via like a general picture.
Yeah.
It's I really don't. I think Peter is probably like I know they're going to dislike this descriptor, but like they're the leftist I dislike the most, the worst Fred Huber, right? Like yeah,
I agree
it's
for very self-interested reasons.
yeah, it, yeah, it's weird, and there was also like the last part of the tweet where they're essentially tying
Hey, I'm Pete.
the income bracket definition of class as to intersectionality as like an inherent part, which like I think Doe kind of like said something about this where it's like yeah, I mean even if that were true, right? Like there's no real reason you couldn't like also have intersectionality with like the better definition of class, right? Like
Well,
even if that were like an inherent part of its history and like
I mean, the criticism
they're
I've heard,
inseparable.
the criticism I've heard of like intersectionality is that like I mean maybe one of the more valid ones is it was sort of like a lawyerly thing. It was sort of a law thing. So it could be like it started off as that and yeah. But then like that depends on like that's like the point they try to like to make that
Yeah, I think it's kind of true that like I think that like the person who coined it, it's like Kimberly
yeah.
Crenshaw or
But
something,
But
right?
yeah, like
And then
so the tweet said like their category different in intersection does not treat them as such. In intersectionality, class is one identity and two income brackets. I don't doubt that some theories of like uses of intersectionality are like that, but you can change it out. There, does
yeah,
is there like something
you can
like
just take what's useful and just like
you just
throw
talk about
out what's
definition of
not.
class?
Like
That's gonna give you another perspective on it, right?
that's
Like you,
it,
Well, it's
that's
a
is there
great
something
irony,
is
right?
there something inherent in in the approach of intersectionality where like class has to be like associated with income brackets? At best, like
It's a
if it's
great irony to
is that
me
even what Crenshaw
because
thinks? I'm not sure that's what Crenshaw thinks. If it is, then that's cringe, and you
I'm
can
not
just swap it
sure
out.
because like Crenshaw, I think
I've only read a little
Crenshaw,
French, not enough.
I, Crenshaw, I'm not sure how what her perspective is because like she seems a bit too liberal for my taste, right?
Hmm.
So like I can understand like looking at that kind of thing and saying like, hey, right, like this doesn't seem really like radical or whatever, but like you can just like take what you find useful about it and like apply it different. I mean, it's weird because like if 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 Marx does that with Hegel, right? Like nobody has a problem with it, but you do it with like a few like kind of red libby like intersectional feminists, right? Like
Right.
and you kind of
Well,
re
it's a
re
great irony. I mean, I think it's just it disturbs me because I think that it's very hypocritical. To someone like Peter, degrowth is worthless because Bill Gates uses it to mean that you have to recycle. Intersectionality is worthless because liberals will use it to mean that like classism is when you're mean to poor people, and that's what the importance of class is to them. But like,
there's
what
this
is very
funny
interesting
thing.
about that is that Peter's concept of Marx is very liberal. So I just
Yeah.
like by that token, we should discard everything that Peter uses. And I don't think that that's true. I don't know that I agree with that.
There's this funny coincidence, by the way, um, that I've noticed that it's like I'm not sure. Are you guys familiar with like the Invisible Committee?
Slightly, I
Um,
haven't read anything by them, but I keep hearing about it. By the way, I linked something in the Discord.
yeah, yeah, the Invisible Committee. There's this one huge chunk. I don't know which book I've read it from them in, but like there's this huge chunk where they talk about the growth, and like I read it and like I felt like, oh my god, this is Peter Coffin. Right? Like Peter Coffin is part of the invisible committee. Oh my god. Because like it was exactly their framing. It was amazing. But yeah, I mean, it's weird because like I think that yeah, Peter's kind of there's a difference though because Peter says essentially like degrowth is bullshit because like don't they say like growth we just need good growth or something?
I mean,
I think that that's what they believe a little bit.
Yeah, Invisible Committee doesn't do that. I mean they don't they go with it in a bit of a different direction, but like it's very weird that people
I
have
think
all
Peter's
these
belief is more so
misconceptions
that growth
about
is like
it.
inevitable. It's actually kind of like a capitalist realist perspective akin to what Mark Fisher decries, which is also very the idea that this happens, so it's just a part of reality.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird.
I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think that's pretty close to what they believe.
I guess. I mean,
oh my
it's
god.
very frustrating
Oh,
to
frustrating.
kind of see them. Yeah, because like I really try hard to like not make any not give any takes about like stuff that I can't like defend, right? Like there's a lot of Marxist stuff that I won't like say like oh this is like that I think like a lot of like anarchists really just are desperate to like give a hard stance on, and I'm just like okay I'm not gonna pretend to like know enough to really take a really hard stance on this, right? But like Peter just seems desperate to do the opposite, right? Just like whenever, yeah, just like give takes about just anything they see on Twitter, even if they know they don't really fully understand it,
It's.
because like the Twitter people who say it are annoying or whatever.
I mean,
No. Well,
I
I
would.
am annoying. He's right.
But I mean, I would suggest this to bump up like YouTube views. But I went to their channel and I just saw that like there's basically no engagement on their videos now. So I'm not really sure that the angle of just like being a shitster on Twitter is actually working at all. So
I'm not sure if it's to like promote the channel or if they're just being like very online, right? Like very much and just very full of themselves. Because like for example, I think it's a different dynamic with, for example, to name another YouTuber who I've recently uh, made a post about non-compete, right? I think it's another dynamic. I think it's another dynamic with them because I genuinely think non-compete is just kind of a bit of a grifter, right? Like, I, I mean, Peter isn't like scared to really. Uh, I mean, he's kind of. They've kind of shown that like they're not scared to really like um, alienate some of their audience, right?
yeah.
But non-compete, I mean, desperately kind of tries to pull off this like left unity angle, and
I mean, I'll be
it,
honest. I'm gonna be very like savage. Like I guess like savage psychoanalysis, I guess, but like that's kind of probably how his relationship is with Luna. So this carried over to his whole like online
He is
personas.
just a fucking sociopath, dude.
Huh?
What a fucking weirdo. Luna, how do you
Oh yeah,
pronounce
it
her
was like
name?
it was bragging about like people getting deported from Vietnam or something. Like yeah, or I remember seeing like something like that. It was like fucking crazy. Like total like like the sort of stuff where you just see like, oh, this whole like bragging about like, we defeated American imperialism, and then you just see it's just like, oh, it's just for like petty like nationalism, where you just like get to do the horrible shit under like the guys that you you kind of just basically were fucking genocided by an empire. Really weird shit. Like the wrong lesson to take from that, basically. The entirely wrong lesson.
Yeah, it's
I
really fun.
to like harp back on like the thing I posted about non-compete on Twitter. I'm not sure if you've
Yeah, I saw
both
it.
seen that clip.
Yes.
Um, like essentially it was like someone DM'd me about like a video of non-compete, and they asked me like, I mean a mutual, and they asked me like, hey, I'm curious. I know you really hate this guy, right? I know that, but like I'm curious, like what exactly like your objections are to like the points in this video, because like I I also disagree with him, but I just want to know like I'm not being crazy here, right? So I watched a large chunk of that video. It was like dogmatism or something, right? Dogmatism sucks, I think it was called. And just a very, I mean, I can go into that a bit later, but a very bad video. It just, and I mean, it even more convinced me that he's just a grifter, because like the way he uses quotes, right? Like it just suggests to me like he has to know that the meaning of those quotes isn't applicable to the things he is applying it to. Like he has to know that, because like it's so dumb. But like okay, uh to
My God.
circle back to like the clip, he essentially was making a point like how Kropotkin avatars and like etc. and like people would anchor him in bio, and anarchist flags, how they're all calling like him like a fake anarchist, and like
Become
he was
anarcho-pack
very
just
mad
like,
about it.
yeah, anarcho-pack just, I watched that video. Look, she asked
That
me,
was a really
Yeah,
fair video. And
yeah,
who's
she's mad.
the
Look, she
fucking
blocked me
guy?
on Twitter. She blocked me on Twitter because I was like trolling a bit. Also, I
Who's
was
no?
right.
Who's that one
uh,
fucking guy? Like, is it? I can't remember the fucking guy's name. Re-education or whatever. That
Re-education.
fucking guy.
yeah.
What a fucking cunt.
Professor
Dude.
Darwin on Twitter, I think he's called.
That guy's
It's
a
oh my,
fucking dickhead.
he's so annoying. Yeah, no, but like uh, non-compete, like he was complaining about like, oh, they're calling me a fake anarchist, but like I want to emphasize that like these Kropotkin avatars, like and like these anarchist flags, or even this anarchist shirt I'm wearing right now, those aren't what anarchist communism means. And then he goes like, this anarchist shirt, by the way, is like made of like this and this material, and you can get it on noncompete.com. And and he laughed in between it, and I think he even said after it, and I don't think that was in the clip, like, oh, I'm gonna get shit for this, right? So it's like I pointed out that there's like both a kind of awareness going on there, like he's aware that like this comes off like really like this completely undermines his point, right? And but at the same time like complete unawareness, because he still puts it in the video. Like why? I,
I think
it,
it's
it
supposed
boggles
to
my
be like this
mind.
kind of like irony thing, where he's like, "Yeah, we all know we all have to survive under capitalism, so help me do that." And it's like, whatever.
Using
I don't
indigenous
really
like
find into it.
Vietnamese labor, probably, isn't that right? I can already get. I can imagine the angle that's going for.
I mean, a lot of left YouTubers try to like say like, oh, it's or like things are ethically sourced or whatever. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? Where it's like, oh, this is made by a cooperative in like some country, and it's like, I don't. Is that supposed to mean something to me? I guess if
Yes.
you're
Yeah,
one of those
and
people and like,
Yes,
it's
and it's not
Richard
even
Wolff approved the co-ops in Bangladesh.
it's not even just that he's like selling merch, right? But like it's that
Yeah.
he's selling like he's selling the anarchist aesthetic as merch, right? To while he's making a point about how like how the aesthetic isn't what like anarchism is truly about. Like I mean, I don't know why anyone would ever, in the first place, like buy a shirt like that. Why? Uh, like I mean, I just like
It would be like
I
if I bought like a Bordiga shirt with like a quote and it's attributed by him, but like knowing that he was literally never signed his texts and it's supposed to be me being ironic. I guess.
it's very baffling to me. And oh yeah, I was gonna wanted to talk about like that video a bit broader. Essentially, like what he did in that video was pull like a lot of quotes from um, I think mainly from like Rudolf Rocker, which I have to
Dipshit.
like
Fucking oh my god.
I really dislike Rudolf Rocker, right? But like even the quotes he used, they were completely pulled out of context, right? And I think he realized that. But like Rudolf Rocker, I think he kind of identified as an anarchist without adjectives, right? So like he was not like a left unity person, but like an anarchist unity person, which I also think is kind of weird, but like whatever, right? Like, and Rudolf Rocker's quotes, I mean, they were more or less like the ones he pulled were like kind of like uh, criticisms of like the organization of like states and like vanguard parties, etc., etc., like about of like centralization and like that kind of stuff, yeah, right? So pretty standard stuff, right? And it was like kind of framed as like a criticism, like wait, let me see if I can pull a quote from the DMs with someone. Because like there were a few quotes and it was so very clearly about like um, the like structure, real existing structures, right? But like here, like power operates only destructively, bent always on forcing every manifestation of life into the straitjacket of its laws, right? And so like their rocker is essentially saying like, oh hey, this is like about states, this is about like vanguard parties, like fuck that shit, right? Like, and how non-compete used it was like, oh this is the problem with dogmatism because like you want to like want people to conform to your ideas, which is like he's critiquing like states and vanguard parties there, but like you're using it to defend critical support of states and vanguard parties. Like, how can you? It's oh my god, I hate him so much.
As I
well,
said,
I mean,
relationship
I think we
dynamics
all
brought
know that it's
into like just politics. I know.
yeah. I think we all know that it's because he's dating Luna. Like
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
like projecting onto people's relationships, but he knows what that fucking quote is about. There's no way.
yeah,
There's no way. Like that's you'd have to be a even more of an idiot. He's not that stupid.
No, I don't think
yeah.
so.
Because like it wasn't even like if Rudolf Rocker was alive today, he would like ruthlessly join us in making fun of non-compete because like as much as I dislike the guy, right? Like he didn't like he wouldn't say like, "Oh, critical support for Vietnam," but like, it's insane to me that he pulls those quotes out of context like that, and that I hate these people so much. Jesus Christ.
YouTube was a mistake.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and
Had a great
also
comment
like
on my channel the other day, actually. Actually, no, I saw it this morning. Was that kink video where I was just ranting and raving, and I get some great comments sometimes. And this one guy was like, this wasn't very persuasive. Seems like more of a rant video. And I was just sitting there, just like dumbfounded
Wow.
at how you could be that dumb.
Oh, you,
People on that platform are idiots.
oh, you want to be convinced? Unzips pants.
Yeah, well, it's like I don't. Well, I mean that's. I'm not going to get back into that topic. We're not going to do kink of pride again. But yeah, that's.
No, we
People
need to
are.
have a conversation about like how non-compete is pushing his fucking kink onto every one of us.
Yeah,
In broad
yeah.
daylight. I haven't consented to this.
Do you think that non-compete is dating Luna because he's into like political femdom? Is that what that is?
I don't know.
No, but I think Luna's the top. I'm just gonna say it. Luna's the top.
That's what I'm saying.
I've
Yeah,
seen
for sure.
I've seen people. I mean, I'll say this like I've seen other people say this, right? I won't say this, but like I've seen other people say that like maybe there's like something going on there where like because like non-compete used to be like a libertarian guy, right? And like a libertarian guy moving to Vietnam, like people.
I mean,
I've seen people point out like maybe there's like a kind of weird Orientalist thing going on there, like.
I remember watching a video where he went over like his old live journal with Luna, and like his old cringy like shit, like and just like basically like doing a like self crit. I remember that. And look,
What did
Luna,
it
like
say? What did it say?
I mean, because he used to be a libertarian bro, like misogynistic, I think. So like, just went over that, just be like, hey, don't be like that. I was wrong, which like it wasn't anything like bad. It's just like, but when you think about it, like maybe that had like a bit of a dynamic going on there. To have like the girlfriend right there, just like he was like, I'm atoning for my sins. Like the most like stunning thing about it is that like Luna's family was part of the Chinese the Vietnamese Communist Party, quite literally. Like I think her father was like a fucking like a cadre. I don't know how high up, but like that's that's what that's about. Like
I don't know enough about them. What does that mean?
I mean that like Luna's family is like quite involved with like the Vietnamese like political party, you know, like
Yeah,
so
but
like
I don't know anything about them. I don't know what that would imply.
I mean just as like it's part of Vietnamese state, so like, so, like the anarchist dating like the daughter of a cadre for the Vietnamese Communist Party.
Yeah, but he
Do you
believes in like a
guys
socialist state. Like he 100%
yeah,
buys it.
of course. It's just
So to him, there's no hypocrisy.
yeah.
do
Either
you
he buys
guys
it or he's pretending to, which would be
do you
funnier.
guys remember like there was this moment where like non-compete. I mean, he tries to sell himself as like an anarchist, right? So he sometimes has to like kind of assert his positions, right? So like he tried to do that like kind of a compromise between like the left unity drift and like kind of balancing it between like him selling himself as an anarchist. So he very cautiously said like, okay, so I think Vietnam is great. It's great, right? But like obviously as an anarchist, I would prefer like they do like they organize in like an anarchist way, right?
But he
Obviously,
also
I
argues that
prefer
like
that, but
Vietnam. He argues like Vietnam is like has like organized a bit like anarchism, like at least like you know local councils or whatever, or like remind of anarchism. I know.
Well,
I
that's the
used to
thing,
watch
I
some
think,
of
of
his videos
anarchism.
when I was like bored, just to like see what the fuck that was about. I don't anymore. I don't watch
I
BreadTube. Only like Jackson, I
I
think.
think I think but I think he said like yeah, I would prefer obviously as an anarcho-communist. I would prefer if they went with an anarcho-communist organizational like framework, right? Like
Anarchist
but like
organizational framework organized by the state.
yeah, but but like um he very cautiously did that because he was trying to balance like his like critical support for it, but like also like him asserting himself as an anarchist, and like he got so much shit for that, right? People were saying like, "Oh, you're like a white man from the imperial core, an American in
He's
asserting your ideas on like
I mean, he's a
Vietnam and
libertarian
like
white, like Asian wife guy. I'm
Oh
sorry.
my god, no.
I mean,
Left
they
libertarian
got
is
he
Asian
even had a
wife.
video where he's like, "I'm a libertarian," like 3 points, socialist.
but
Like,
they got so mad at him, which like it's just very funny to me because like he can't really be an anarchist, right? Because if he was, then he'd lose all his audience from like I mean he probably would would have have to divorce Luna, right? And he'd lose
are
all
they?
his
Well, wait, though they're actually married now. I forgot they actually had like a breadtube
they,
marriage. Oh,
yeah,
I'm honestly, I'm happy for them. I think they
yeah.
make each other happy. So even with, like all the shit
The-
we're talking about, like I think that they're good for each other.
I think they like I think if he actually was an anarchist, that probably like I mean I think he would get into a lot of shit with like that part of his audience that like Marxist Leninists and like people who like support Vietnam and like that part of his audience would like just completely abandon him. But if he was to like abandon anarchism, like the all the like people who believe themselves to be anarchists, they would all abandon him. So it's like kind of a balancing act between like kind of maintaining like both parts of your audience while not offending either. So it's yeah. I mean, if I think it's interesting to look at him trying to pull it off.
What are we like on time right now for this
Oh,
call?
1 hour, 26 minutes.
Oh, it's a bit of a long one.
Yeah. Look, when we talk about non-compete, I just remember that time I made a joke with a certain someone that we should just pretend to be like two autistic, like bread tubers. We just swap ideologies like every week, and we just like to confuse the fuck out of our audience. I just remember that.
I think kind of closing that out. I think as funny as non-compete is because he is just so like first of all that he had that meltdown after Anarcho-Pact did like a video lightly criticizing the fact that he had no idea what he was talking about.
Anarcho Pack could
I
have
think
like
he was
literally
harsh.
He
murdered
got
him.
so upset and then he had no rebuttal either. That was the crazy thing. He just like went on a rant about left unity and that fucking re-education guy was a real cunt in Puppett's comments. I remember I think I posted a screenshot of the original comment. He edited it and changed it, but it was real fucking aggro on her, and I did not appreciate it. That felt like shades of getting mad at a
I,
trans woman.
I think
But
it
like,
was like pretty ruthless, but really polite at the same time because like he did have no idea what he was talking about. So it's not like, oh, here's a few pointers where like improvements in like your understanding. No, it's like just like completely like, okay, this is just completely wrong in every single way imaginable, right? Like, but Anarchopad was like really polite about it because she's like one of the least confrontational people on like on that entire sphere. So it was really funny to me to have people be really outraged about that because it shows that like people just don't care about like about being accurate about anything or whatever. They just don't want to be criticized, or they don't want like yeah they don't want any infighting between YouTubers or whatever.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
and it makes
so
them look really bad too. I don't remember. I don't know if you guys remember when Luna. How do you say your name? Oi? Is that it's
I'm not
O
I have
I
no
sure.
idea.
is
Yeah,
how
you
it's
don't want
is
to
how
sound
it's
racist when you're
romanized.
pronouncing that.
Well, I don't. Yeah, it doesn't. Luna,
Careful.
Luna, Luna. Oi, oi, oi.
Oh my god.
It's
Cut that out.
Now
no.
now we're
It's funny
gonna have
because
to cancel you.
okay, thank you, I appreciate
No,
it.
look, I'm
She
really
keeps getting
looking
into
for
slap fights
I'm really
with
looking
like
forward to like the being like clipped out about the N word and just like being made to look like the next Vosh. That'd be really good. I need this for my career.
we need the
Yeah.
attention, please.
I
No,
mean,
but it's
you
really funny
you already
because
kind of look like Vosh, right?
I will I
oh.
I will commit a hate crime against trans women right now.
No, I was trying to say I think it's really funny because Luna kept getting into like slap fights with like Vietnamese Marxists where they made her
Yeah,
look
with
like
like
a fucking idiot.
yeah, like a left-com Vietnamese Marxists. Not even like a
Yeah,
super like councilist, I think, if I remember correctly too.
Yeah, Ella. I
that was so
remember.
fucking funny.
I remember. Yeah,
Just
that
pointing out
was.
it's a bourgeois state. Sorry, like you get mad about it. Like
Yeah. Well, and she's got like these really fascistic social tendencies, Luna does, where she's like, yeah, we're taught by our state what values to have, and it's like
yes,
that's
the socialist
insane.
ethics, socialist morality, like
Socialist
like
morality. Yeah, that's insane. Sorry,
it's
no, no
great.
thanks.
That definitely can't go wrong. Definitely will never go
You're
wrong.
it's interesting. Non-compete is her sub, but she's the state sub. That's Marxist-Leninism.
I mean, it's kind
Do
of
you
like
remember?
yeah.
Do you guys remember like I think I posted like a screenshot of this. Luna made like a post, and it was about like um, the Karl Marx like mountain and the Lenin River or
The
something,
Engels, yeah, I think
and
there was that thing about Engels too.
What the fuck?
Which that perfectly describes. Wait. I'm gonna pull up the quote. Wait. On authority. Wait. There's a perfect quote. Wait.
I
It's,
mean
it's,
it was just great. It was like I think it was like the Lenin Lake or something. It was just like a place in Vietnam where there were like I think something was named after Ho Chi Minh too. I'm not sure, but like where like a few things were like named after like Marx and Lenin and like I think maybe Ho Chi Minh too, but like I'm not sure. It was just yeah, very very strange. And it was I remember it too being like they had like signs up there, right? And it was really a beautiful spot, right? And people I think I posted a screenshot and people commented like I mean the spot is beautiful, but it's like those signs just make it uglier, right?
look. Well, I've got the quote. It's from Engels. These gentlemen think that they have changed the names of things. They have changed the thing. Wait. Oh my God. I bungled that. Wait. No. Wait. Let me
I know
restart.
the
Wait. Cut
quote.
that out. Cut that out. Okay.
Rewind,
Well,
rewind.
quote. These gentlemen think that they have changed the names of things. No, oh my God, holy shit. Wait, okay, third try. These gentlemen think that when they have changed the name of things, they have changed the things themselves. This is how these profound thinkers mock the whole world. So that's
Yeah, I mean the Karl Marx mountain that's like truly a mountain of like revolutionary struggle right now. There's like
we put the name on
without that
there. What do you mean? Like it's not revolutionary?
I mean without the mountain, like the class struggle in Vietnam would be nowhere because like it's the Karl Marx mountain, Constance. Come on, right? Like be mature about this.
Mox Mountain. Like a Ben Garrison
Yeah,
band.
I think There was like a thing Luna posted once about like spots in Vietnam that were like named after Marx and Lenin, like the Marx Mountain, the Lenin Lake, or whatever.
You want to hear
Very,
something really funny? This is gonna crack you guys up.
Sure.
In Japanese, so moving from Vietnam to Japan, in Japanese, when you talk about a mountain, you have like different suffixes for the names of like different like if an object has a name that it has a proper noun, it has a certain kind of like honorific that you'll give to it. But mountains actually have the same honorifics as you would use for like a different kind of like a person. So it's like you literally call the mountain san. So like Mount Fuji is Fuji-san. So Mount Marx would be Marx-san. No Marx-san, Yamete.
I'm
Horrible.
imagining right now like an alternate reality where like the exact same scenario is happening with non-compete, except like it's a Japanese girl and like.
Oh, and he's a fascist?
Wait, what?
That would be so funny. No,
Wait,
if it was like a Japanese girl and she was like a Japanese like imperialist and he was like trying to do like fascist unity instead.
Oh my god. Holy shit. Wow. That's
Oh, what if she was North Korean and he was trying to do Juche unity?
Oh my god.
honestly the one of the
I
wildest
mean,
thing about Juche is like the racial theory just got based off of like something an anarchist wrote, like some fictional like ethnological like theory, and it just got fucking subsumed. It's some really fucking weird like race theory. It's so wild. I
Oh,
need to
so
read
he'd
more
love
into
it.
that.
He'd be a huge fan.
Yeah.
Well,
I
an
mean,
anarchist writer, must be nice.
didn't Mao used to be like an anarchist?
Yeah,
Maybe he wrote
he
it.
read he read Kropotkin. He read Kropotkin, but then he got like
Yeah,
Kautsky
yeah.
killed.
Maybe he wrote it. I'm not sure.
All right, we gotta call it here. We gotta call it here.
Sure.
Thank you everybody for listening. You've been listening to the Low Hanging Fruits. I'm Lauren.
I'm Constance at Bordiga Cummies. Follow me on Twitter.
I'm at I'm Elyssa and Inzor Elyssa. My ad is unpronounceable, probably vrij omslachtig, but you like, I mean, just search Inzor Elyssa.
I am Kelsey, your wife. My microphone talk this time.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get the cat to talk. So far, so good.
We need catnip. We need to just stuff Kelsey with catnip.
Yeah.
And thank you everybody for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.